In this video, we'll take a look at how to use Tableau to create visualizations of ratios. And remember, ratios, very simply, are comparisons of two terms expressed as a quotient. So for example, they're expressed as x to y, or as, for example, the statement that Wyoming produced 0.264 tons of recyclables for every ton of refuse. So, how do we compute ratios and visualize them in Tableau? Very simply, let's connect to a data source. So in this case, we're going to go through the example listed in your book, and some of the results will be a little different because we're working with more up-to-date data set. But here we go. So let's connect to our text file. That was the monthly tonnage data from New York. So open that up. And now we can go to sheet 1. So we'll see some familiar dimensions and measures. The first thing we need to do is, if the question we're asking is, we want to examine by borough, the ratio of recyclables collected to refuse collected. So for every ton of recyclables collected, how much refuse is collected. So you'll see that we have a variety of different measures. Community district, which doesn't measure any of the refuse or recyclables. We have leaves and organic tons collected. We have mixed glass and plastic tons collected, paper tons collected, the refuse tons collected. We have the organics, we have residential organizations, we have schools, and we have Christmas tree by tons. So we want to look at recyclables versus straight refuse. So that means we have to create a calculated field. And that's easy to do. We'll look at two ways of doing it. Some of it will be a reminder, but always good to remind. So the easiest way to do it is we go to Analysis in the tab in the menu up top, create calculated field. Let's name it recyclables, or in this case, we can name it collected tons, because we want to note that these were collected in tons. Okay, measured in tons. Okay. So now you take the mixed glass and plastic, drag it here, plus paper. Those are the two recyclable categories. The calculation is valid. We click OK, and there we go. We see we have the new calculated column, the recyclables collected, in the measure. We've got the number, which means it's continuous. So now we do that. We need to create another calculated field that examines the ratio, because we're looking for the ratio of recyclables to refuse. Now, we'll do it we can use the Analysis tab to create a calculated field, or we can just right-click in either the Dimensions area or the Measures area, and we'll see that that's an option here. Create calculated field. And we'll name this our ratio of recyclables to refuse tons. Okay. So now the easiest thing is, we can remember a ratio is expressed as this x to y. So we want to see what the ratio of recyclables, our x, is 2y. So it would be divided by refuse tons. The calculation is valid. The problem we have with this is if we were to do this, we would actually, the problem is that the way our chart, our data source is arranged, this would calculate recyclables and refuse tons for every community district and then add those together. So in the end, your aggregation would be an aggregation of this ratio in every community district, because that can be broken down. Borough can be broken down into smaller groups, and you wouldn't be adding the total tons and the total tons. You would be adding the aggregate of the ratios created for every community district. So it would actually add those individual ratios, and that would misrepresent what's going on here, if that makes sense. So we need to add some more text here. And so we want to make sure that we're creating a ratio based on the sum of these. Sum, and then sum. And here we go, sum and sum. So that way we want the sum of all the recyclable collected tons and the sum of all the refuse collected in tons, and then we want that ratio, so that master ratio, and that's the one we're looking for. The calculation is valid. We'll click OK. So now we have our ratio. So now we want to examine how it looks in boroughs. Okay. So we take our borough from dimensions and we drag it to rows. Now that leaves our boroughs, and now we want to take our ratio of recyclables to refuse and drag it to columns. And here's our result. Now we can do a few fancier things here. Could we make this easier to stand out? So more immediately stand out. So we have the boroughs labeled. That's good enough. But to make this extra, let's take boroughs and put it to color. So that way it's easier for each borough to stand out individually. And we can rank this from highest to lowest. So we see that Queens has the most, Manhattan the second, Brooklyn, Staten Island, the Bronx, and so on. Okay. So some things have changed since from your book here, because we have more updated data. Okay, so now let's say we wanted to see individually within each borough there's a number of community districts. And we want to drill that down even further and see, okay, well, this is by borough, but how are the community districts performing in each of these boroughs? So I have community districts here. I'm going to need to make this part of our row. So I need to drag this from measures to dimensions, because it's going to be a dimension, right? We're going to be adding it to boroughs as a way of drilling down, and that is going to be a dimension. So to do this, what I do is I grab borough and move it up to columns like this. So the borough and that ratio of recyclables is going to be in columns. Now I'm going to take the community district and I'm going to grab that and put it in rows. And there you go. You can see the ratios by community rows. Now, there's a way I can make this stand out even more. Let's say I wanted to have the actual numbers, because I just see a bunch of bars. So I could go up to here with the T where it shows mark labels, and I can add the mark labels. Let's say I didn't like those mark labels having so many decimal places. So what I can do is go to the area here where it says ratio of recycles to refuse, and right click on it, and I can go to default properties, number format. And much like Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets, you have the opportunity to change your numbering a bit. Here we want number custom. We only want 2 decimal places, and click OK. Also notice that when you change the decimal places, Tableau automatically rounds. So it rounds up, or so undo. So 0.0767 here in the Bronx. If we redo that, 0.08. So just know that it does round. So is this visual workable? Okay, it's not bad. But suppose I wanted to see like what districts stand out as the best districts in New York. You know, I'm an interested politician. I'm trying to really rank these things. Well, is there a better way? And we can always ask this of visuals. So we could try a different visual that might use, instead of these numbers and bars like this, we could try a different type of visual. So what we could do is we'll create a new sheet. And what we'll be shooting for is to create a highlight table. And we know we need 1 or more dimensions and 1 measure, at least for a highlight table. So let's try this. We want borough. We want community district. So we'll control click with that. And we want the ratio. We'll control click with that. And then we'll click on highlight tables. Now your book used green. My default is blue. So I go to color, edit colors, palette, green to make it look like the book. And here what this has done is using saturation as a way of indicating a high number. So heavy saturation is a high number, low saturation or lighter color here is a lower number. So we can see the big ones here is this district in Brooklyn and this district in Manhattan. Now suppose we wanted to rearrange this, because we'll see that this is flipped. You know, in our old table, we see that the boroughs were in columns and the community numbers were here in rows. We can do that by simply going here, and we see this button here. And this button, if we click on it, it just switches rows and columns, swaps them. And so we can get that. Now, we can kind of see the big ones, but we got to sort of hunt and peck around. And in this case, the saturation solution doesn't make an eye-popping visual that tells me like right away what's going on. So is there a better way to make this immediately obvious to our data consumers? And we want a simple list of community districts in a descending order of the ratio. Okay, let's try this. One way we could solve this problem is creating a new field that combines borough and community districts. So what we would do is we highlight borough, we click on it, then control click community district. Okay, we right click on either one, and we create a combined field. Notice that now borough and community district are a combined field, but that means borough and community district are also still independent. So it doesn't change them automatically. We have just a new dimension. Now, if we were to take borough and community district and put that in rows, and we were to take this recyclable or ratio of recycles to refuse and put that in columns, okay, we can do that. We can also take borough still and put that in color, because if we were to take borough and community districts and put this in color, it would color every single district a new color. And that just doesn't work. It gets confusing. It doesn't communicate data we want. So if we take that away and we go here, borough and community district, right? We tried that, so we tried borough and put that in color. All the districts from the same borough will have the same color. So each borough has its own color. That makes more sense. And now we can use this filter here, or this clickable button here, to rank them from descending order. We could put them in ascending order if we wanted. Let's see. It's default. Now this is descending. So we see these. We can also, if we want, put the data labels on them. It's still holding to our 2 decimal place default. I'm fine with that. Suppose now we just want to rank them. Like, well, who's the best? Who's the worst? We have a lot of things. If we had maybe a few, like 1 to 5, even, we could get away with that. But with this many, we want to rank them. So all we need to do is create a rank column. So that's another way of calculating a rank. So we need a rank field. So if we click anywhere in either the dimensions or measures panel, right, and I right click, right, and I create a calculated field. This time, this calculated field is going to be a little extra, and we're just going to call this one rank. So in this, what I'm trying to do is find this ranking of each one of these districts. So each number is going to be discrete. There's not going to be rankings in between. So in this case, between 1 and 2. So there's not going to be the decimal places or anything. It's just going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. So we also need to make this discrete. And so we type in index and then parentheses. So as soon as this index appears, we can apply a default table calculation by clicking on this blue text. We go to the drop down where it says automatic, and we go to borough and community district combined. This is the one we want to compute based on. So basically it's just saying that we're going to rank based, we have this index, we're going to rank them from first to last, and that these numbers are going to be discrete. So we'll get there in a moment. We click OK. We click OK. Now we have the rank measure. Now, what we need to do is take this pill, and we click here, and we convert it to discrete. And you'll see that the color changes. It's not green anymore, it's blue. Blue is discrete. We drag rank over, and we place that here in rows before borough and community because we want that listed first. And so now rank is placed here, borough and community numbers here, and here is our aggregate refuse rate in tons. So what we see, and maybe 2 decimal places is not fine enough. We're seeing a number of the same even though the bars are a little different. So let's go back and now go to the ratio, right? I right click on it. I go to default properties, number format, and I go to 3 decimal places. Okay. That is better. That's more accurate. I don't have, if it's a tie, it's a tie, but other than that, I have a very clearly arranged chart. I type on here for the title. What I want here is ranking of my community districts ratio of recyclables to refuse in tons. There we go. Okay. We've labeled our Y and our X axis. And that is how we make this visualization. So in this, we were able to calculate a ratio. Remember, we have to think about what kind of ratio we're exactly calculating. And to make sure if that we're doing aggregates, we have to include the term sum in those aggregates, or else it's going to not, it won't display what you intend. So now we get a general sense of how the 59 community districts compare relative to each other. We see which districts have the highest ratios, which have the lowest. We get a good sense of which boroughs have districts at the top of the list, which have the bottom. We know the precise ratio for any district, and we can pick out any district and rank. This is a pretty handy visualization, and later on when we work with dashboards, we can also show, that's a story, sorry, I want this here, dashboard. There's a way to drop these and arrange them so that way we can have all of these visualizations if we so choose to have them. So we'll get to more on that later. So in short, what you've managed to do is create your first ranking in here based on ratios. In our next video, we'll take a look at rates.